Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience, where they felt stuck, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others and finding possibility for yourself. Let's get into this week's conversation. And we are back for another exciting episode of Off the Comma. Very privileged to be here and very grateful to be here. Before we even started recording with this week's guest, I was talking about how I just always look forward to recording these episodes because I get to focus on one thing and kind of immerse myself in the conversation, and all the other stuff that's on the to-do list today gets to kind of just go away for a little while. So I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. This week is no exception. And as with what's become kind of the norm, most of my episodes now, this week's guest, Toni Akin, whom I'm going to let her introduce herself here in a moment, is somebody that I have not met before. So I'm getting to meet someone new. I'm excited to learn about her and get to know her through her story today, and add yet another, powerful human being to our community of storytellers here on Off the Comma. So with that said, I'm gonna stop talking, and Toni, I'm gonna hand it over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself to us? Let's do what we always do. Start with, how would you like to be known? How would you describe yourself as a person? And then after that, you can share anything you want us to know by way of introduction.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for inviting me on this morning. My name is Toni Akin. I live here in the beautiful city of Providence, Rhode Island. How I would like to be known as a person is my true self. Kind, caring,
Mm,
hardworking, a good community member, a good neighbor, just somebody that could be trusted, a trusted individual,
mm,
somebody that can really see all sides and all viewpoints, an understanding person. And I think that's so much, appreciated by my loved ones, my neighbors, the community members. And, it's really how I am actually known here within my neighborhood. So,
nice.
a longtime resident here in Providence, Rhode Island, for over 26 years. Originally from Boston, Massachusetts, but Rhode Island is my home. I've always felt
Okay.
at home here. I've always felt accepted here, for who I am, for who I love, and for the work that I
Nice.
do, being recognized, in the community, in various organizations that I'm involved in, in both, with the commissions that I work on, with the Housing Commission. I've been a former member on the school board here in Providence. But I'm also an advisory member for the Volunteer Service for Animals here in the Providence chapter as well, and other organizations in the region around New England. I'm involved as a member with the New England Opportunity for Education, which is a organization of about 300 members. That we focus on, public education for low-income, first-generation students,
Mm,
in various programs like the TRIO program and the McLean program. So education is also another passion of mine, as well as housing stability.
okay.
So, very important endeavors that I work on. So that's
Mm.
how I want to be known, and that's really who I am as well.
Yeah. Well, I love it, and I just want to acknowledge you because I mean that's quite a list of things that are important and that matter to you. And what I believe I'm hearing is that you care very much about your community, your home, your location, and based on some of the very first things that you said, it sounds like your community cares a lot about you as well.
I hope so. I believe so. I mean, like I said, we have a very tight knit community here in Providence, and actually all of Rhode Island. I mean, it's one of
Hmm.
the most welcoming states, that and I think in all of New England and maybe across the country.
Nice.
So it's just a really beautiful state. location wise and people
Okay.
wise. And we're a very diverse population. So that makes it much more interesting as well for me and my community members as well.
Yeah. Well, great. I'm looking forward to hearing how kind of diversity comes up in your story because I hear how important it is to you, and I don't want to steal anything from your story. I will drop in a little kind of selfish reference for a moment. So Rhode Island is one of only three states left that I haven't been to in the United States, and Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Alaska of all places. So at some point in the future, I may hit you up and say, "Hey, Tony, I'm coming through Rhode Island. Let's have
So
lunch."
please do. And you're welcome to stay at my home. I have
Oh,
guest room here. I love to have visitors and family members come and stay. And you're always
nice.
welcome here, Paul.
We will talk offline then. Awesome. Thank you. Let's get back to you though, because today is your episode, your story,
Yes.
and your platform
Yes.
today. So, in a minute, we're going to get into the five questions and really get into your story. But one thing I like to do before we get started in that is, you're giving a big chunk of yourself and your time today. So, as you think ahead for the next, 35, 40 minutes or so of sharing your story with us, let's start with what intention would you have for yourself today in telling your story?
Well, Paul, I think it's an important story to tell because, I come from very humble beginnings. As I said, I grew up in Boston. I grew up in a public housing
Mm,
development and probably one of the most notorious housing developments of all in New England. It was called the Maverick Projects. And I grew up in a very difficult time during the bus riot era. Oftentimes riots, oftentimes Molotov cocktails thrown in our bedroom window.
mm,
I saw my sister got shot in the back by a sniper on the roof.
mm,
And lots of chaos from outsiders, not from the residents, just from outside detractors, what I would call them. But it really brought the community members that much closer within the projects.
hmm
And we shared those struggles, and as a community, we got much closer. But it's also something I believe that we're sharing some of those difficulties today, and
hmm
it's much more important now that we even share as a community and come closer together to
hmm
be able to get through some of these difficult times that I didn't think I'd witness again in my lifetime. So I think my story can help people understand, able to get through some difficulties, bridge those differences together and come together and see past our differences and more like what brings us together as a community. I think that's
mm
a big component of my story and why I'm here today.
Okay.
And I'd like to talk a little more about that as we get into
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, well, we definitely will. And so I just want to acknowledge you for, being able to, help people get through difficult times, help people find pathways to come together, bring people together.
Yes.
My intention today is to support your intention by creating a space for you to be able to share your story. And then obviously that there will be people out there who will see a little bit of themselves in you and your story. They might feel a little bit more connected, a little less alone, and in the best of cases, maybe even feel inspired or empowered to go out and do something that they've been wanting to do.
Exactly, that's my hope as well. And that's a good point. And in reaching out to the community and to people all across the nation and really the world, because I think it's so important in terms of communities, not just the area that you live in. It could be a global community, and I think
Hmm
that's so important that we all recognize what brings us together as humans, and what we all strive for many of the same things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and personally, I'm already resonating with a little bit of, the teasers that you shared because, I just have a personal opinion and it's a pretty common one out there that, especially in our country today with things that are happening that we're going to be relying more and more on our communities than perhaps we may have allowed ourselves to in the past. So let's get into your story. I want to hear and give you the opportunity to start talking. So, Tony, the first question of our five questions is, where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Well, Paul, that's a very loaded question for me because I feel like I was born sitting on the
Mm,
comma. As I said, I grew up, what I call doubly disadvantaged. I grew up impoverished. I grew up living in, a public housing development that had a lot of, difficulties in that own segment. But I also knew at a young age, who I was, who I
mhm,
loved. I knew I was different. And I knew that society wouldn't necessarily accept me, because of those disadvantages. And you know, I think that my parents were a great influence on me. My late mother, was a great advocate for public education in our community. During the bus ride era, she was out, working with school committee members and public officials to try to bring to attention that it was a parent's right to send their student to any school that they wished, whether it was
mm,
a private school, a Catholic school, public school, a magnet school, a regional school. And she was quite effective in that, but she also got a lot of, pushback on that as well, like I said, from those detractors. Um,
mhm,
and my father, he, was born in Kentucky, very poor. He walked to school every day without shoes. And that's how important education was to him.
yeah.
And then he joined the Navy when he turned 18 and he studied medicine. So, he didn't really get much further than his medic studies, but he was considered like the project doctor. So
Mhm,
all the kids in the projects would go to him with skin knees, and people would come to him with minor ailments. And he was a great support within the community as well. So,
mhm,
I saw them struggle so much because of those difficulties. And, I unfortunately I lost them as a teenager.
mm,
And I feel like a lot of that stress factor caused their demise, quite
mm,
frankly,
mm,
because, it's a lot of stress when you take on those bigger forces while trying to raise a family, and being, impoverished and trying to make improvements in the community around you. So,
mhm.
they'll
Can I
always
jump in for
go
just a
ahead.
moment?
Go ahead.
So, give you an opportunity to kind of take a breath too, but I'm really, really curious about something that you shared. So I want to explore something for a moment with you. You were talking about, I believe it was your grandmother, you said, who was a big advocate for sort of like
Yes.
freedom of choice in schools. And this is a different decade. I don't want to force you to, date yourself or anything like that, but I want to draw a connection to past and history to today, if I may. So, because I'm assuming we're similar generations, we probably grew up in, similar decades of era. When you
Yes.
talk about, freedom of choice in education back in that era,
Correct.
what you're talking about is that anybody has the right to choose the school that they want to, and in this context in particular, that just because you might be economically disadvantaged or what have you, you shouldn't be limited to just one school district. Is that fair to say?
That's very fair to say. And that's actually a good point because we all hear, the old adage where your zip code is indicative of
Hmm.
how good your school system is. We all
Yeah.
hear that.
Well,
So
and
I think
the
today we're still talking about that. We're still trying to
yes.
improve that formula. So
That's what I
yes,
wanted to comment about, right? Is like you're talking about back then, where it's basically like being able to allow people who are economically disadvantaged to have access to a better education. Whereas today, a lot of the conversation is about how can people who are already economically advantaged use the same tax dollars to improve their already good education options. So I'm kind of selfishly saying your conversation about the past isn't necessarily the same conversation that wealthy parents today are having about why they should be able to go to charter schools or private schools on the public tax dollar.
That's a good point. And actually, last night I attended a public forum here in Rhode Island because there is a proposal to actually change that
Mm,
funding formula. So it was a very lively discussion headed by the Rhode Island Foundation, and a special commission formed to actually change that formula from a municipal level to the state level and make it more equitable, across
mm,
the board statewide.
interesting.
And there was a lot of feedback back and forth just about that because
Mm,
some of the rural communities, felt left out of that conversation with that. And we're a
mm,
small state here in Rhode Island, but we have 39 cities and towns with 39 mayors and school districts. So what wasn't discussed was how to regionalize that and how to maybe reduce some of those expenditures
mm.
that might come from that top heavy segments.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
Okay.
very exciting. It's a great proposal. I loved how it could address some of those, making municipalities pay their fair share in the wealthier districts,
Mm,
into the educational
yeah.
systems, and having it on the state level. But we know that the average taxpayer might take on some more burden as well. I'm a
Hmm.
big advocate for that. I don't mind paying more taxes, Paul, if it's going to increase, educational opportunities, because I've worked in education for over, 2 decades now, in public
Hmm.
education specifically, both in K-12 and on higher education. So I'm a big advocate for that. But I think that this particular proposal, I really need to dig into it a little bit
Hmm.
more to ascertain just how equitable and fair share
Mm.
that proposal will be. So
Okay.
it's still a discussion it's very much a discussion today, even though, yeah, I am, a middle-aged woman here. I'm, approaching my late 50s. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
what I've had to do to get ahead. And it was based on hard work and education and resilience. And
Hmm.
I think that that's still needed very much today.
Yeah. Thank you for entertaining that. And I apologize. I did distract you and took you off. Like you were in the middle of talking about kind of where you found yourself sitting on a comma, and you were talking
Yes.
about your childhood and your
Yes.
your parents and your grandparents and kind of what their experience was like. By all means, continue to say more about where you found yourself sitting on a comma.
Yeah, well, as I said, because I had lost my parents as a teenager, my late grandmother, God bless her, she was an Italian immigrant. So she helped raise me during that time frame. And, she was also another staunch advocate of education. And she was adamant that I stay in high school and that I, complete my studies and that I go to college. And
Hmm.
it was a struggle for me. And I also give credit to my softball coach because he's the one that kept checking in on me, making sure I went to study hall, making sure I ate lunch, pushing me to go to practice and to games, which was a great support needed for me. I did fall behind. I
Mm.
did have to go to summer school to get that high school diploma, which I consider one of my lifetime achievements, Paul.
Hmm.
Um,
Mm.
but it was my late grandmother that really, she bestowed this savings bond wrapper to me with her handwriting on it that said,
Mm.
you know, finish high school and go to college. So this I still keep because it motivates me for the work that I do today.
Yeah.
So that's where I was sitting on the comma. That's why I felt like I was born on the comma. And I had to grow up fast, and I had it was tough, and I realized that being tough and being a strong person were not necessarily the same thing.
Hmm.
So I had a lot of strength that I could fall back on with, my grandmother and my coach, and those are really the only two notable people. I had a lot of fake friends around that time frame that didn't have my best interest, and they were doing nefarious activities, and I was an easy target. I was parentless, I was indigent, I was LGBTQ, which was not definitely not accepted back then.
Hmm.
And it was the very dark years, from high school as a young adult. And like I said, it took a lot of resolve, to take that high school
Hmm.
diploma and put it to use in the business world, because I did graduate within the top 10 of my business class. So
Okay.
I used that as a catapult, to take on like bookkeeping assignments and to take on, like office jobs that, secretarial. And it really helped me get that uh, my foot in the door as a
Hmm.
federal contractor. And that's where I launched my service in the public arena. Um,
Okay.
and my work, was ultimately recognized by the U.S. Army.
Mm.
When I was on site at the Department of Transportation, the U.S. Department of Transportation, at the Volpe Center in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So, they then encouraged me to go back to school at night to continue on with my education and get my college degree, which I chipped away at it at night for many years. And then when I finally did get that degree, I wanted to help other students stay
Mm.
focused on their own studies and try to avoid the difficult path that I took, that I was faced with. And I feel like I made a difference. I've had many students come up to me and say, thanks to you, I stayed in school. I finished my degree, and that was just so rewarding when that happens.
Hmm. Let me jump in for a moment. So, I mean, what a powerful story, and I want to acknowledge certainly some of the the difficulties, the hardships that you described as
Yes.
someone who also grew up. I use the word poor. I know we all have to use the words that resonate with us, but I grew up poor in the '70s in the South, and also grew up as a young gay man. I didn't know it at the time. Well, I knew it at the time, but I hadn't accepted it at the time. But anyway, I was gay in the '70s and poor. And yeah, so I mean, I can certainly self reference and recognize, some of the things that created for me. But in your story, it sounds like you had these kind of like criteria or not criteria, these factors, that were all sort of working against you in the social context. And then, of course, the economic disadvantage and of all the stigmas that come with that, from others who don't know you. Um, Quite an experience. And yet, I hear you say, that not only did I have the influence of, my parents until they passed, the influence of my grandmother, who sounds like she was pivotal, and this coach that you refer to with such respect, something like shifted. Well, no, let me ask you. It sounds to me like there was something in you that always kept you going, because obviously you didn't go in one direction with the fake friends with the nefarious deeds. Something kept you from going further in that direction, and something also helped you change the arc of your trajectory through education and career and accomplishment. Before I go to the second question in a minute, what would you ascribe that to? What was it within you that helped you kind of endure and then ultimately navigate that comma?
I wanted a better life. I wanted a better community.
Hmm.
And I knew that I was part of that formula to create that. Um, we all have within our own selves, and that's what I love about our country, because we all have the means to create a better situation for our own selves. Um, it takes a lot of resilience. It takes a lot of just resolve.
Mhm.
And it does require support. It does require support of you know community members and community leaders and looking at how you can change um, from a bad situation and use that as fuel to improve not only your life but other people around you. And as
Mhm.
I said, when you asked the opening question, how I want to be known, in high school, many of my high school, former classmates say that they know me as being kind. They know
Mhm.
me as being, resilient. Some even called me gutsy. And I
Mhm.
think that really is a good description of me because I am gutsy in terms of facing those fears. And I think
Mhm.
fear is a factor in many people's lives where, they just feel like they can't get out of a bad situation. So I want
Mhm.
people to know, face your fears and move ahead
Mhm.
with confidence because you are part of that, your own part of that solution in your own life.
Something you said, the reason for the facial expressions, is something you said kind of prompted a thought for me. And it seems like, as you describe yourself several times now as being a kind person,
Yes.
I wonder also if there's one of the elements that kind of propelled you forward out of these situations was self kindness. Because I think about some of the times where I've made big mistakes in my life or bad choices. I wasn't being kind to myself, but you're making these choices that are in your best interest and moving you out of situations you don't want to be in. Seems like there's an element of like self kindness and self respect there as well. I mean, you tell me.
That's a good point. It took a while for me to, be kind to my own self,
Hmm.
and to love myself. Because like I said, those double disadvantages that I described, um, I never felt accepted in Boston. I mean, even though
Mm,
I grew up there, um, I never felt like a part, like of welcomed. But when I came to Rhode Island, when I met my partner over 26 years ago,
hmm.
I felt accepted immediately and wanted. And I
Mm,
think it's just finding that right fit and finding that fit within yourself that says, I forgive myself for making those mistakes that might have made,
mhm,
um, for putting yourself and I take responsibility for that, for getting, I was lost. As a teenager, I was lost. So anybody that would smile at me or say hello to me or was nice to me, I would, gravitate towards. So I made some
mhm,
poor decisions um, about who really cared about me and,
mhm,
found myself in sticky situations like that. So, I forgave myself for that. And I said, well, now as I got more mature, I realized that self-kindness and self-love was a big factor that was missing. And as a
mhm,
matter of fact, I even had people tell me it's, like, Toni, you've got to love yourself more. You've got to forgive yourself. You didn't cause, your parents to die young because they took on this extra stress. You didn't, choose to be, you know, LGBTQ. You didn't choose to be impoverished. I mean, these are factors that, that I had to contend with.
mhm. Isn't it amazing how, as children, we have a tendency to take on the blame for all the things that we were born into, even though nobody else is expecting us to carry that blame. Toni, let me ask you the second question, and by all means, continue the telling of your story, add whatever else you need to, right? So, as you look back at this comma that you've been describing to us, that you were sitting on, or in your case, born on, what did that create for you? I feel like you've already shared a little of that, but what else would you say? What did that create for you?
Well, as I mentioned, I feel that it created a lot of havoc in my
Hmm.
life, in trying to manage those difficulties, Paul. It's something that I work through with resolve. And I learned to uh, you know hold my head up high and know that I was worthy, and that I could make a difference. I could make a
Mm,
difference in my own life. I could make a difference in my loved one's life, and the community around me, and my associates. But I think that it was challenging, and
hmm
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. uh, that I see it today with marginalized communities, that it's difficult because there is still a lot of misconceptions out there,
hmm
especially with public housing. And I'm proud here in Rhode Island, in Providence, Rhode Island. We do have a lot of public housing stock. We have over 2,700 units. We're
mm,
growing in that area as well. But there's the not in my backyard mentality. It's very much alive and well.
hmm
And, that it hurts. It really kind of hurts me personally because, there's these misconceptions that people that live in housing developments are nefarious, they're indolent, they're troublemakers, they're bad neighbors, and that's so far from the truth.
mm,
And I see it here in Rhode Island in some of the surrounding towns, with pushbacks for developing public housing. And even here recently, I see commentaries on Facebook or social media from community members, saying, for example, there's a new development called the Flynn here in Providence that's opening up, and it's based on some affordability housing, what they call the AMI, so
hmm
affordable measure index by HUD. So those components allow, based on income, the number of units that can be rented to lower income. And some of the comments were just very disturbing, like, oh, you
mm,
better do double background checks on them, and it's going to turn into another projects. And, so I think people don't understand how the AMI factor is formulated.
hmm
And I think they're afraid of public housing initiatives because of what I just described. And
Yeah.
I think in theory, overall, people support affordable housing measures, but in practice, it's not the case.
Yeah.
So it's
If
hard.
I may, let me jump in for a moment and I'll give you a chance to kind of sip some of your coffee and this is also a really kind of hot topic for me as well. And I'm going to share a couple of things and then invite you to kind of continue because you said earlier that this is an important thing. This is an important topic for you. It's an important cause for you. You talked about some of the things that you're involved in your community, from association boards, panels, and roles and so forth that you play a role on. And then, of course, it's near and dear to your heart because of your growing up experience. It fascinates me in this country as opposed to some other countries, right? How in other countries, affordable housing is used when people find themselves in a situation where they've temporarily been limited in their abilities, right? Or people who obviously have long term limitations. Maybe there's some types of disabilities or what have you, and so forth. But in other countries, people don't demonize affordable housing the way we do in this country. Like, people just don't have as much. We've got a place for them. They can still be contributing members of society and have a decent life, right? Here, it's almost like when you get to the point where you might have to avail yourself of public housing, now suddenly the world sees you as bad, evil, just all these negative things. And so we as a society, we just so demean and look down on people who have to take advantage of affordable housing, knowing full well that everybody would prefer to be able to, have their own place and live the quote unquote American dream and so forth. And it's like we strip away resources, we force people into these bad situations, then we demonize them for having to take advantage of the situations, and then we're surprised when sometimes people in those situations act exactly like the people that you told them they are.
That's a very good insights, Paul, and I couldn't agree with you more about that. That concept, and it's something that I'm truly working on earnestly here, not only to address affordable housing initiatives, but the unhoused,
Mm-hmm.
because we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing that, especially here in Providence, we're seeing an increase because we have a very high rental index here.
Mm-hmm.
And there are proposals at City Hall for what's called the rent stabilization implementation, which, I have to dig into that report a little bit more. But what's also needed is to look into the core expenses of housing as well, in terms of, the taxes, the insurance, the utilities are skyrocketing. So
Mm-hmm.
even, the middle income sector is really getting squeezed, and we're seeing some crisis situation growing. Everybody,
Mm-hmm.
I agree, everybody deserves a home. Everybody needs that stability, and I've been to other countries as well, and met with housing diplomats in other countries as well to learn how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. Here in this country, it's a major factor that for HUD's cutting these programs. They're
Mm-hmm.
cutting the emergency housing voucher programs. They're cutting the AMI rates, even though it's supposed to be between 30 and 80% of that calculations, but sometimes it's up to 120%.
Mm-hmm.
And affordability for a household of four, it's not feasible. So
Totally. Well,
really,
it's just like the people who actually are making good incomes and so forth, and in a what do they call it, market rate rent situation, your rent's supposed to be about 30% of your overall income, and now we're up to 50 and sometimes even higher. Like that's all the numbers are moving, it's wild. What I'm hearing you say though, as I continue to kind of interject, I apologize, but your growing up experience really galvanized you. You lived that experience and it prompted you and propelled you forward towards a life you wanted. And what I believe I'm hearing you say is, but I never forgot where I came from, and I am so passionate about others who have to walk those steps that kind of in addition to everything you have shared in your answer to question 2, I believe I'm hearing you say that sitting on that comma or being born on that comma activated you, because every time I throw out some random thing or something, some random point, you're like, oh yeah, this is happening right here, I haven't read that yet, or I need to dig deeper into that legislation, or I still need to review that law or that code. So I hear someone who's activated by the way she was, the environment she was grown up in, and that it's very important to you to look at equity for other people in those situations.
yeah, absolutely, and that's a big factor. I feel that public housing, public education go hand in hand. They're interconnected,
Hmm.
and I've been a product of both. And I still get some even today in my current roles, and I work in school systems in Massachusetts. I'm on several boards as well here in Rhode Island and Massachusetts with TerraCore, which focuses on more of environmental education and land conservation, which I'm also a very big proponent of.
Hmm.
And I think what happens there, Paul, is um, in regards to that is that even in my own life experience and in my current day, with all my achievements that I have under my belt,
Mm-hmm.
when I tell people, when they ask where I was raised, and I can see them kind of step back. It's like, oh, wait
Mm-hmm.
a minute. So I could see that fear in people's eyes, or that I don't want to say shock, but sometimes
Yeah.
they don't know, that that uh, my background,
Well,
and I
it proves
divulge
my
that.
point. It proves my point, doesn't it? Because where you lived isn't just a place that you happen to live. It's kind of who you are as a person. They assume it has everything to do with your character and who you are as a person and so forth, right? That's a hard thing to overcome, being judged as a person based on a place that you slept for a number of years.
Well, it was also a factor in my own business ventures when, like I said, I grew up a third of my life in public housing. And then I was a renter. I was a renter until like my mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up, purchasing my own property. And I wanted to help other people,
Mm.
with housing even then. And that was like my business model, was to have rental properties, and both commercial and residential. And I had residential properties all across New England.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been on the other side of that equation as well, with contracts and torts and laws, and that's uh, not an easy business model.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a two-way street, in terms of making it more cohesive. So when I
Mm-hmm.
talk about public housing and I talk about private endeavors, I'd like to see more collaboration between the two, and effectively. That business model now has sunsetted because it took so much of my time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was still working full time, so I kind of closed out that model, and focus more with governance and
Mm-hmm.
public commissions.
Mm.
But
I see.
I've seen all sides of it, and very rewarding, very difficult, but not unfeasible to do. And um, I've always kept rates feasible,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, my rental rates were even lower than what they were in public housing,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to help families, and
Mm-hmm.
to keep stable housing. I saw the importance of it, um, and I often rented to uh, people that were challenged, like with disabilities, or
Mm-hmm.
with uh, you know uh, some type of maybe first time renters or
Sure.
students,
Senior citizens,
senior
right?
citizens. So
Yeah.
those were the people that I would want to attract, as leaseholders, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very, very rewarding with that business model. So
I
we
see.
need to be able to do that more in the private industry, rather than push that population away.
Mm-hmm. Tony, I want to jump in because, I mean, I can tell from your story and your rich background and even current experience, there's so much more you could share with us about kind of, where you are currently taking this and so forth. And in fact, you might even get to speak a little bit more about that on question 4. But I want to jump into question 3. Let's come back to you and kind of your experience. What have you learned about yourself, or what are you learning about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma?
you know, Listen, like I say, I work in public service. The wheels of change is slow in
Mm,
public service. So what you hear is true. It takes a while to make changes, to make recommendations, proposals, reviews. So I think what I've learned is patience, and collaboration is key. And as I say, bringing people of all different walks of life, all different
mhm.
viewpoints at the table, being a good listener, diffusing tensions, working collectively. It's so important, and recognizing and appreciating everybody's differences. And it takes a lot to
Mm,
be to be a leader. And sometimes to be a leader, you also have to be a follower. And I think that in this current political climate, you have so many people that, they think, yelling or, being outwardly demonstrating,
Aggressive, yeah.
yes, abrasive, you get more, sometimes you push more people away. So I find that for me, it's more effective to, like I say, to have a calming presence, to be a good listener, to be somebody, a trusted person, and being able to bring some ideas to the table in a reasonable manner. Not everybody's going to agree with everybody's viewpoints. I get that,
Hmm.
but we need to be able to better listen to each other and get those core, those core issues addressed, um, as with unity. So
Mm.
that's what I found is that we need more unity,
Mm.
addressing those issues.
Well, and the listening part is key, isn't it? And that's what I love about what we do here is, I mean, not only am I obviously, listening to your story today, and there's going to be many, many people out there listening to your story on air, but it's also demonstrating what listening is like, right? I mean, honestly, I think I probably have interjected more with your story today than I have others, just because this one is kind of like a really, meaningful point to me. But we can listen to people and respect what they have to say without having to have an agenda around it or steer it in a particular direction, right? So there's so much that can be learned by letting someone actually tell their story. Tony, question four is what has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma?
Well, Paul, I found that what has changed, that if you're not sitting at the table, you're going to be served on the menu, and you're going to be
Mm,
served cold. So
mm,
what I say to young people is get involved civically, do exactly what you've described, be good listeners, be good neighbors, be good citizens, and do your part, because that's what we need. We have a lot of people in public administration that are leaving because of the tensions that are rising.
mm,
So, we need people to step in, put their best foot forward, and that's what I've learned is to be confident in yourself, confident in your abilities. Everybody can pitch in, and
mm,
everybody has good ideas, and just trying to share those ideas. It doesn't matter what political affiliation you have. It doesn't matter
mm,
your family background, your income levels. We all need each other. We need each
mm,
other, to um, be interconnected as a society. So that's what
mm.
I've learned.
I love that, and I think I'm taking a couple of things from that, specifically on this. All we all need each other is in today's day and age, and I know I'm guilty of it too. Is so often we believe we've got the answers and we want to tell everybody else how it's going to be. And if we actually lived in a world that empowered that and we all just got to decide for everybody and we had everything exactly the way we want, I think that world would not end up serving us in the long run, right? It's kind of like when what was it, a Disney movie or something like that, a Pixar movie where the grasshoppers got to run wild and they stripped the landscape. It was also in The Lion King, right? The hyenas and they stripped the landscape and
One of my favorite movies.
yeah, right. And then there's no more food left. We had it exactly the way we wanted, and we rapaciously plundered the land. And now what do we do? So okay, so that we all need each other because sometimes we need the voice of dissent. It's for our own good. I think another thing that I took from this, Tony, is that no matter where you come from, two things, it doesn't have to dictate where you go, and actually where you go can be inspired by where you come from. And this comes up so often in so many stories, but I see that particularly in yours, right? Like I grew up in this particular set of circumstances. I chose something different for myself, and yet I brought that forward as well. Like it actually has served me as I continue to serve others, and I draw from that experience. So, question five, Tony, is what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Well, Paul, I'm not going to get off the comma. As I said, I was born on the comma, and I will die on the comma
Mm,
because of my plight, because of
mm,
my, uh, my beliefs that, you know, this is not, this is, this is not a reality TV show. This is
mm-hmm,
real world experience. This is life, and life is sometimes unkind, and so I think that my level of work will increase
mm-hmm.
over this next uh, segment of my life. What's remaining, God willing, will let me continue to be of service. But I don't feel like I'm ever going to get off the comma because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because of what I see and what I hear and the work that I do. You mentioned The Lion King, and one of the other endeavors that is near and dear to my heart is working with animals, and I am a member of the advisory committee for the volunteer services of animals here in Providence. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I'm really excited about is the building of a new facility here in Rhode Island. It's going to be the largest pet care and pet store and shelter facility opening soon. Very exciting about that.
Nice.
Very excited about the law on animal cruelty is now a felony offense. So, these are things that I'm actively working on as well to improve the lives of animals because, they need us. They rely on
Mm-hmm.
us, for care and understanding. And as I say, those are other important things. I grew up with all animals,
Nice.
parrots and dogs, cats, they were all strays, and have multiple animals in my current household, and
Mm-hmm.
so they add so much joy to our lives, just as much
Nice.
as human beings. So, I think The Lion King is a very good movie
Yeah.
that
Well,
depicts that.
and when you say, I don't think I'm ever going to get off the comma, based on what you have shared with us, I think what I'm hearing is that I'm choosing to be on the comma, but not because I'm stuck, but because I can be of service here. And that kind of like I'm on the comma with the others, sort of. So it sounds very intentional.
Yeah, it is. It's very much intentional, and I use it as my fuel to be of service
Hmm.
and not
Nice.
forget those hardships that I had endured,
Hmm.
and to help others utilize that as a way to help overcome their own challenges. Because
Yeah.
I know a lot of students out there, they're struggling with their studies. Their families might be struggling to find permanent homes.
Hmm.
Food prices are so high now.
Hmm.
I grew up on welfare, and I had all those public services. So very, very important that we have those strong public services, but equally as important that they have uh, the capabilities to make improvements in their own life, to
Hmm.
be to become more self-sufficient. Um,
Yeah.
if they wish, or if they can.
Hmm.
Not everybody has that access. So, just trying to be on that comma, stay on that comma, and use it as a way to motivate myself and others.
Yeah. Well, and it reinforces as we wrap up, I believe it reinforces kind of the whole focus that you've put on community. You've said it in different ways. You've said it directly and indirectly. Like there's a community of people that you can be of service to that have served you in the past, and now you want to be of service to them. So I love that. Toni, you and I could probably talk for many hours more to come, but let's start to wrap this up, our episode. For people who want to hear more about what you're doing, maybe connect with you directly, follow you on your socials. I'll of course put all the links in the show notes so that people can access them. Tell us where are some of the places that people can find you.
Well, Paul, Facebook is an easy access for me. I'm Toni Akin in Providence, Rhode Island. It's Toni with an I. It's Akin, Akin. I'm also on LinkedIn. I do have my own web page. It is tonyakin.page.gd. It is a free website portal. It's also another access point. LinkedIn, if people in the business community want to access me, they can access me there under Toni
Mhm.
D. Akin in Providence, Rhode Island. And, happy to, speak with anybody further about any of these matters and to work collectively with anybody on any of these issues that they
Mhm.
see fit.
Awesome. Toni, the last thing we do in every episode is a section I call acknowledgments. And it's because obviously this whole podcast is about listening, telling stories, and that in and of itself is lifting up voices, right? And boosting people's messages. Your story wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you an opportunity to do the same. So, in this segment, it's your opportunity to boost, lift up, give a voice to, promote others who matter to you. That could be causes, organizations, other creators, or just people in your circle of influence who are important to you. Who would you like to acknowledge today? And I'll be sure to include that in the show notes as well.
Well, thank you, Paul. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge my late parents, my mother, Kay Aiken. Today would have been her birthday, so I feel like that's
Mm,
some good vibes coming from the year, as well as my late
yeah.
father, Ray Aiken. And my late grandmother, Lena DePaulo, which I still have this wrapper that is a motivating factor from her that is keeps me on the comma as well. But also my partner of 26 years, Allie Gorman, very well known here in the community, and a lifelong Rhode Islander.
Mm,
And also my late coach, my late softball coach, Anthony. He was very well known. He was also my neighbor in the housing development, Anthony
mm,
Milano, very well known in Boston Public Schools system, and also my community members here, my neighbors here in the North End of Providence, and the community leaders here
mhm,
that believe in me, and that see what I can bring to the table, and working, being part of the solutions,
mhm.
and bringing people together cohesively. So I appreciate the mayor, the governor here in Rhode Island, all of those leaders that have faith in me, and it's so appreciative.
Nice. I will make sure to include those references in the show notes here. And unfortunately, all podcasts must come to an end. So I want to thank you again for sharing your story today. Like, like almost all of the stories. I mean, like all the stories. Definitely your story resonated with me. I think your story resonated a little bit deeper with me today because of some of my growing up experiences and so forth. So thank you for, sharing of that experience and giving us all something to think about and to be inspired by.
My pleasure. And thank you again for inviting me on today.
Wonderful. Have a great weekend. We'll look forward to following your journey.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Paul.
What an honor it is for me to hear and share these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way. Think about what you learned from this conversation. I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling or reflection, because surprises can reveal themselves to you when you write your thoughts down. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform and all social media at Off the Comma. Feel free to interact and comment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.